A new 90-day fiancé couple is facing an awkward sleeping situation once they reunite in the United States, thanks to one of their guard dog mothers. During the February 23 episode of the TLC hit, viewers were introduced to Gregory, who still lived with his mom Lucille in Long Island, and Nye while waiting for his bride-to-be Joan to arrive from Uganda. To start, however, the couple would be living at Lucille's home, something Greg, 35, said Joan was skeptical about. She wants a place that we can have privacy for ourselves and just be ourselves together, he explained in a confessional. Lucille had concerns of her own, fearing Greg could be taken advantage of in his new relationship, so she asked Greg and Joan to sleep separately until their wedding day, much to Greg's chagrin. This put Greg in an uncomfortable position. Knowing Joan, I think it's going to be a little bit of a tough conversation. Greg first met Joan while on a trip to Uganda, which he said came about after he fell asleep on a man's shoulder during a plane ride. He and the other passenger hit it off, and Greg's new friend invited him to visit the East African country, where he owns a safari business. According to Greg, he met Joan within the first 90 minutes of his trip. They lost contact for nearly 2 years after their initial meeting, but somehow, Joan found Greg on social media and reconnected with him online. Greg returned to Uganda to visit Joan and even proposed to her on her birthday. Now she was on her way to the United States on a K-1 visa. But life in Long Island was going to be a major adjustment for Joan, who had a bachelor's degree in marketing and finance and worked as the director of a non-profit organization in Uganda. Joan also had to live with Greg at his mother Lucille's home as he tried to save up for a starter home, which Greg said starts at about $400,000 in the Long Island area. "I'm nowhere near that position to put down a deposit on a family home for sure," Greg admitted in a confessional. Bunking with his mom, he added, would help him save up. But it could take 1 or 2 years for Greg to reach that goal, especially with Joan out of work until she can get a green card in the U.S. Meanwhile, Greg's mom was worried about her son, who she described as being naive when it comes to relationships. Lucille feared Greg could be taken advantage of due to his kindness and generosity. Despite his mother's concerns, Greg was sure that Joan was not entering the marriage simply for a green card. He said he has been transparent with Joan about his financial situation, which he admitted was not the best. But Lucille remained uncomfortable with the idea of her son being alone in a bedroom with his soon-to-be wife and asked if they could sleep separately. Greg did not understand why his mom cared, but Lucille told him it was about being respectful in her home. "I've been brought up that way," she explained. "But where would Joan sleep? We have a futon on the end of the wall," Lucille said, but Greg told her, "That's not right. We've waited 7 months, almost, to be together again, and for her to come here and to sleep in a separate room. It's crazy," Greg said in a confessional. However, he acknowledged that he and Joan are in a bit of a sticky situation financially. "We're not necessarily paying rent," Greg explained. "So when she asks me to do something like this, I have to take it very serious." Greg also feared what could happen if his fiancée ultimately did not get along with his mom, who admitted to babying Greg a little, often doing his laundry and making him nice meals and cleaning up his messes. "I would definitely have to just double down and find a place," he said in a confessional. "But it would pretty much drain the bank account, almost immediately. It's got me shaking in my boots a little bit here." Greg discussed his housing dilemma with his friend Laura while doing some plumbing work on her home. He confessed that he was not financially prepared for Joan's arrival and did not know how long he would have to bunk with his mom. Ultimately, Greg's goal is to open a bakery as his main source of income. "It may be rocky for the first couple years," he said. "We'll deal with it when it comes, cross that bridge when it gets there for me." But Laura urged Greg to start thinking a little bit more in today, rather than passively waiting for the future. "You need to grow up a little bit," she insisted. Greg acknowledged in a confessional that he did not always take his life seriously and was stuck in that young mentality throughout his life. His relationship with Joan, he added, really put things in perspective. "I have to grow up," he confessed. "I'm not living in regret, and I feel like I should have taken things more serious. But that's where I'm at right now, and that's the reality."